This couple's open relationship led to this woman's murder. Connor and Betty Bowman got married in 2021 and agreed to be in an open relationship. Everything was going well between the couple until August 16th of this year when Betty's life was taken by Connor. Connor began poisoning Betty with gout medicine by slipping it in her smoothie after she found out that he was falling for another woman. You see, Connor and Betty agreed that they can see other people outside of their marriage but could not become emotionally attached to anyone else. And when Betty found out that Connor was really falling for this woman, she confronted him and suggested that they get a divorce. Connor also worked as a poison control specialist, so he would know how to successfully poison Betty. Investigators also found really weird searches on his laptop, such as the words poison and lethal doses. And get this, 10 days before Betty's death, her friend tried a smoothie Connor had made her and said that it tasted really bad. She even joked that Connor may be trying to poison her. A friend of the couple even said that 3 days after Betty's death, Connor already had his new girlfriend in the house. Suspicions also arose when Connor pushed the medical examiner to skip an autopsy so Betty could be cremated immediately. Luckily, investigators did an autopsy anyway, and not long after, Connor was charged with second-degree murder of his wife.
It was pretty clear that Marilyn had had sexual relations with both Bobby and Jack. There's also speculation that Robert Kennedy was at Marilyn's house the day she died. Biographer Anthony Summers sat down with the BBC and Marilyn's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, the same housekeeper who knocked on her door in that early morning hour of August 5th, 1962. And apparently, Eunice put her head in her hands off camera and said, "Why do I have to keep covering this up?"
Tiptoe by the window, that is where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Oh!
A little boy wouldn't let anyone into his room until a policeman forced his way in. Only then does he discover the secret he's hiding. Peggy Bailey is an elderly woman living in a small town outside of Los Angeles County, California. She noticed that the house next door had been empty for months, until one day she noticed a new neighbor, John, had moved in. A young boy caught Paige Bailey's attention at night. All the kids the little boy played with had gone home, and he was still playing outside. When Paige woke up the next morning, she was surprised to find the boy sitting alone outside the door, concerned for his health and safety. Peggy decided to report the incident to the local police. The police agreed that there was a potential danger and sent officers to the boy's residence to investigate further. However, John was adamant about not letting the officer in without a warrant and took defensive measures. The officer wasn't deterred by this, and he forced his way into the house anyway. What he found inside was nothing short of shocking, simply unbelievable. Follow me. Find out what happened next in part 2.
These are scary cartoon truths that'll terrify you, part 17.
Okay, so Garfield is actually hallucinating from starving to death. Garfield seems like your normal house cat, but he eats 10 times his body weight and still feels hungry. Normal house cats can do that if they're starving to death. Garfield was actually abandoned by John long ago, and he's slowly starving to death while hallucinating the memories of a more comfortable life. This theory was even shown in the 1989 Garfield Halloween special. Garfield wakes up to find the house empty, then looks outside to find the windows boarded up and the grass overgrown. This is so traumatic to Garfield that he forces himself back into the hallucination, and the never-ending cycle continues.
So it turns out that baby Harlow, 9-month-old from Alabama, was never actually kidnapped. If I were the mother, I'd be so mad at the dad right now. Not only did the dad leave the baby in the back of the SUV briefly while he ran into a friend's house, he didn't put the car in park properly, apparently, and the SUV rolled back down an embankment hundreds of yards and was covered in these kudzu vines. So it was really hard to see. The first 3 searches that they did of that area where the baby was supposedly taken from. They didn't see it, and it was the fourth search that they did of the area where they finally saw a bit of the SUV, and then they were able to rescue the poor baby. We all know what happens when babies are left in hot cars, and this was in Alabama. It's a miracle that the baby survived for up to 14 hours, they said, in a hot car.
A 38-year-old teacher has been accused of raping a 12-year-old student, and to make this situation even worse, she's allegedly pregnant with his child. Fifth grade teacher Alyssa McCommon was arrested in September after she was accused of raping a student at her home in 2021. Alyssa, who is married and has 2 tween children of her own, reportedly befriended multiple children through video games before connecting with them on social media. Law enforcement has even accused her of allegedly creating a code word for the children to use so they could indicate they were alone so that she could allegedly send them nude photographs via Snapchat. She was released on a $25,000 bond, but then arrested again after law enforcement says she violated the terms of her bail agreement by allegedly reaching out to a 12-year-old victim on Snapchat. In court, prosecutors played a secretly recorded phone call between the teacher and the alleged 12-year-old father of her baby. In the phone call, she tells her alleged victim that she's pregnant with his child, that she would love and raise the baby, but for him not to tell anyone. She's facing charges of child rape, coercing a witness, and aggravated stalking and harassment, and she's due back in court in November.
To avoid possible contamination through the air, please keep shelter in your residence until further notice. If you are a resident of King County, please stand by for further updates.
Just when you think you've heard it all, remember Rosemary and Lovu? I mean, who doesn't, right? Well, as it turns out, there are way more like her out there. Welcome to yet another episode of Keeping Up with South Africa with me, Bella Monsoon. Today, Agnes Segamotsi Setwanshaw made her first court appearance in regards to an alleged claim of the orchestrated death of her niece. This follows after her arrest in Centurion yesterday. She faces charges of murder, fraud, and defeating the ends of justice. The 49-year-old woman has been under surveillance for the past 2 months by none other than Sergeant Mabunda, the man who ultimately brought down Rosemary and Lovu. This surveillance began after a tip-off from a relative. The body of her niece and the suspected victim has been exhumed after initially being ruled as a natural death. She passed away shortly after the suspect had fraudulently taken out an insurance policy on her life. And it gets worse. Along with the relative's death, the death of the suspect's son, who died in July of 2023, her husband, who died in 2016, and her 2 daughters, who died in 2015 and 2006, are also being investigated. And yes, over that period of time, she allegedly pocketed large sums of money. Her case has been postponed to November 24th, and as always, I'll be sure to keep you updated.
Have you heard the disturbing theory about Harry Potter? If you love these movies, turn this video off because you won't like this. So we all know the story of Harry Potter, the boy who lived under the stairs, moved to Hogwarts and became a wizard. But what if I told you Harry never actually left the cupboard? So the theory is that Harry imagined everything and his only friend was a pet spider that he'd talk to. Harry is that starved and dehydrated by his abusive aunt and uncle, and that the whole world of becoming a wizard is just his imagination. Do you believe this creepy theory?
This is Albert Fish, known as the Gray Man, and welcome to Stupid Ways That Serial Killers Have Gotten Caught, Part 10. Fish was tried and found guilty of raping, killing, and cannibalizing 3 children in the early 1900s. However, he claimed that he had murdered over 100 children and even boasted that he had a child in every state. Especially deranged is the fact that he sent a letter to the mother of his last victim. Her name was Grace Budd, and she was only 10 years old. The letter detailed how he lured her, strangled her, cut her into pieces, and then ate her over 9 days. But ultimately, he got caught because the mom turned the letter in, and the police looked into it and saw that this letter was on stationery from the New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association. Fish didn't work for them, but a janitor did, and that janitor had lived in the same rooming house that he did. They simply had to go to the janitor's last known address, and there was Fish in his house with evidence.
Strangest coincidences caught on live TV. Missing person Robert McDonough walks past news crew while they are doing a missing report on him. The news crew realized who he was, so they called police, and they confirmed the man was in fact Bob McDonough.
This is Bob. This is you identifying as Bob McDonough?
I think so. It's Bob McDonough. Yeah. He looks a lot like a guy.
Strangely, he was found completely fine, and he was just walking down the street.
I'm Jerry, man. Been looking for you for a while. You hurt or anything? No? You cold?
Hey. Well, sometimes timing is everything, Aaron and Shannon, and good news and a happy ending right now. The gentleman behind us you're looking at, that is Robert McDonough. We were doing our last live shot at the bottom of the hour, and we saw a gentleman just kind of walk up behind us, and he identified himself as Bob McDonough.
Let's talk about the recent disappearance of 16-year-old Carly Guss. In 2018, Carly was a high school junior living with her family in Chalfant Valley, California. It was the morning of October 13th when her stepmom reportedly woke up to find that she was missing from her bed. The night before, Carly had told her parents she was going to a football game, but really she was going to a nearby house party with her boyfriend. She ended up calling her stepmom Melissa at 8:30 p.m. to tell her that she was terrified and needed a ride home. Before Melissa could even find the house, Carly was running down the street towards her car. When they got home, she begged her parents not to be mad at her for smoking marijuana, and then asked Melissa if she would sleep with her for the rest of the night. This is where Melissa's story begins to change. Initially, she said that she woke up in Carly's room at 7:15 a.m. to find that she was missing from her bed. She now says that she didn't sleep in Carly's room after all. Melissa and Carly's dad spent the morning searching for her, but with no luck, they contacted her birth mom and police at 9:30 a.m. Almost right away, authorities found 3 credible witnesses who said they saw Carly walking down the street early that morning. Unfortunately, these witness accounts led absolutely nowhere. Today, Carly's birth mom believes that Melissa knows more than she is leading on, whereas Melissa and Carly's birth father believed that she was abducted upon her approach to the Route 6 highway and was possibly sold into trafficking. This is a map of the Route 6 highway, so if Carly was abducted, she could literally be anywhere. The FBI is currently investigating her case, and they don't just investigate any missing person. It's clear that something awful happened here, and a reward is being offered for any information.
They saying Diddy was out here getting people cars blown up. What? Ever since the Tupac situation came out and the dude tried hinting that Diddy got something to do with it, people been dropping the T on him, I guess. I guess people not scared no more to come out. His ex Cassie made a statement stating that Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car because Kid Cudi and her had something going on. Kid Cudi just came out and confirmed that this actually did happen. That after he was threatened by Diddy, his car got blew up. This all comes after Cassie files a $30 million lawsuit against Diddy, stating that their whole relationship was traumatic, where not only Diddy would harm her, he will also hire men to come wrestle with her while he recorded a wrestling match. Basically insinuating that Diddy's allegations about having a lot of boy toys is actually true. And people weren't believing her too much because she started dropping all this tea about all these things that Diddy has done to other people and rappers. And they're confirming, yeah, that happened to them. Yeah, oh my God, this is about to be a documentary, boy.
Breaking news, a 5-year-old twin has stabbed his twin brother to death. Authorities responded to the family's home just before 4 p.m. on Wednesday. It is said that one of the 5-year-old twin boys took a small kitchen knife and attacked the other. Deputies were called to the scene, and upon arrival, the 5-year-old victim was rushed to the hospital. It was there that the 5-year-old twin succumbed to his injuries. Authorities said based on the current investigation, the child was unaware of the wrongfulness of his actions, so no charges will be filed against the 5-year-old. In addition, they said no charges will be filed against any of the adults. Because it is a case involving 2 minors, no further details have been released. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
The body cam footage I'm about to show you is beyond disturbing and also has pissed a lot of people off. Hi, my name is Ethan and here's everything you need to know and see in under 1:30. In Kenmore, Ohio, on October 16th of this year, police received a call from a homeowner claiming that 33-year-old William Ozingo had an unknown woman in the attic of the garage located in her backyard.
You know he's in there for a fact?
I know for a fact.
I swear to God, go ahead.
Police tried to knock on the door and get in, but were unsuccessful and pissed a lot of the viewers off because they were seen standing around for 6 minutes, making jokes and laughing, all while there was a kidnapped woman inside.
Marilyn, did you see that? You might need that. Hey, you got like 12 of us here, so you're gonna come up with something.
Well, we were thinking the roof. Go through the roof.
Finally, they rush through, kick down the door, and arrest William, and when they get the 23-year-old girl down from the attic, they see that she is covered in bruises. Like literally so much so that she couldn't even see out of her own eyes. She was hospitalized for 3 days with facial fractures, a brain bleed, a broken arm, and fingers. The girl, who I will not be naming, even told reporters that William doused her in gasoline, threatening to light her on fire. Let me add that William has also been arrested for abduction in 2011, 2014, 2019, and this year. Give this man life in prison.
Disneyland doesn't want you to know about the Disney Dark Ages. This is a period of time at the Disney parks known for having the worst ride malfunctions and bloodiest accidents in the park's history. It cost the park millions, it was absolutely the park's fault for it happening, and it's what tonight's episode is going to be all about. Basically, during this era, Disney said, hey, we're not going to pay to maintain the rides anymore, we're just going to fix them as accidents arise. They felt like it was costing them too much money to continually maintain the rides for safety, so they cut all of the maintenance. They even cut having people on site to make sure that people's seatbelts are fastened properly. Instead, they just had a few maintenance teams that operated at night that would fix the rides that had issues during that day. And this was a horrible idea. For instance, the teacups weren't maintained at all until an 11-year-old boy was flung from them and broke his vertebrae. And no one bothered to check Space Mountain to make sure it was functioning properly until a wheel fell off the coaster and 9 people got hurt. And as these accidents are arising, there's actually a rule in the park that attendants can't call 911. So there were all of these horrible accidents happening all the time, and no one was able to call the paramedics. Instead, they had to call Disney Services, who would in turn call the Anaheim Fire Department. There's obviously a lot more to this story, and I'm going to tell more of them here eventually, but tonight's episode is going to be a deep dive into all of this.
This politician took his own life on live TV. This is Robert Bud Dyer, and he was an American politician who ended his own life in a live press conference. In the early 1980s, Pennsylvania discovered that its state workers had overpaid federal taxes due to errors in state withholding prior to Dyer's administration. A multi-million-dollar recovery contract was required to determine the compensation to be given to each employee. In 1986, Dyer was convicted of accepting a bribe from Computer Technology Associates, a California-based firm, to award them the contract. He was found guilty on 11 counts of conspiracy, mail fraud, perjury, and interstate transportation in aid of racketeering. And Robert Bud Dyer was scheduled to be sentenced on January 23, 1987, but on January 22nd, Robert Dyer called a news conference in the Pennsylvania State Capitol building in Harrisburg, during which he fatally shot himself, ending his own life with a .357 Magnum revolver in front of reporters. This was then broadcasted later that day to a wide television audience across Pennsylvania. And I'm going to explain the whole thing right now. After Dyer finished speaking at the news conference, he pulled out an envelope with a Model .357 Magnum revolver in it. And when the crowd in the room saw what Dyer pulled out of the envelope, the mood changed immediately. The question on everyone's mind was no longer whether or not Dyer would resign, but what he planned on doing with the firearm. Inside the room, people gasped and Dyer backed up against the wall, holding the weapon close to his body. Dyer then calmly said, please leave the room if this will affect you. Among those people who stayed, some pleaded with Dyer to surrender the gun while others tried to approach him and seize the weapon. However, Dyer warned against either action, exclaiming his last words, don't, this will hurt someone. Robert Dyer then quickly put the muzzle of the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger, firing a shot through the roof of his mouth and into his brain. He collapsed on the floor dead. Blood ran out through the back of his head and through his nose. 9 news cameras recorded the events, and one of the cameras remained focused on Dyer and captured close-up footage of the aftermath of the shooting, as his body was slumped and blood streamed from the exit wound in the back of his head, as well as from his nostrils and mouth. He died instantly from the gunshot shortly before 11 a.m., but was not pronounced dead until 11:31 a.m. This is definitely one of the craziest things to ever happen on live TV, and what's even crazier is that the footage is still out there. I don't recommend searching or looking for this video because it does depict extremely disturbing things that might be unsettling to people. Can you just imagine watching this in 1987 expecting a normal news conference, and then something like this happens?